Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you, as I do every week, about Vedic astrology, what it means to you, what it means to the world in general. For anyone who would like to schedule a reading with me or um, learn Vedic astrology, my phone number is 508 525 0001. Or if you want to be referred to other astrologers, I can provide that information as well, if you like. And there are various astrology schools I can refer you to as well. Uh, it's the purpose of this channel is to familiarize you with how Vedic astrology is reflected in the world or reflects the world's events, and also to get a handle on what's coming up soon. So basically, although certainly I want to promote myself, I also understand that not everybody will resonate with me, and I think that's an important distinction for anybody learning any discipline to make. Okay, so it's not. I have confidence in myself. I'm not. I don't consider myself to be a bad astrologer or a bad teacher. As a matter of fact, I consider myself to be quite good. But I also know that not everybody is going to necessarily connect with me. So that having been said, again, the contact information is 508 525 0001. You can text me or email me at Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. Uh, that's my common um, that's my common email address. And um, you know, uh, it's my prices will be going up slightly next year, just as a cautionary note. If you get them before the end of December, uh, you'll you'll be good. I won't be increasing for current clients, uh, so you know, so just to be aware of that. All right, so um, but again, contact me also if you would like to be on this particular program with me, discussing astrology, giving your feelings about astrology and how it works. If you want to talk Western astrology with me, if you want to talk any kind of divination system, that's more than welcome. And because because I'm actually familiar with several of them, just contact me. I'm not a tough guy to talk to, and I'm actually pretty friendly. So, so that having been said, let's go. Let's get on with the program. So, um, also, if you could do me an enormous favor, it's a small step for you, but a big step for me. If you could hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons on the computer, that would be enormously helpful to my efforts. And also, um, and also uh, contact me with recommendations for improvements. I am going to switch to shorter broadcasts. I think next year, in addition to these hour-long forecasts, I've been having trouble eking out the time to do them, and I should have more capability. I'm back on my laptop because it's a little bit easier to use than the other computer I used, and I think the signal strength will probably be more consistent. So, so let's move on to the chart. Let's look at what's happening in the sky right now, and yeah. So this is a chart for where the planets are currently. All right, so I'm going to stop the share because I can see it's not going through. All right, going to try it one more time just to be on the safe side. All right, so this is where the planetary activity is right now. We have a Capricorn rising where I am. This is Sunday, uh, December 10th, 2023. I'll do an annual broadcast, but I'll touch on that a little bit this week, next weekend, and I'll have Jean Karazian in talking with me as well soon about annual what to expect in 2024. The other thing is, so let's go back to Saturn uh, being, so we have Capricorn in the first house, Saturn's in the second house, aspecting Jupiter, retrograde Jupiter. We did have, interestingly enough, we did have some interesting moments with academics in the United States on Capitol Hill over the past week. So we had, I believe it was the presidents of UPenn, Harvard, and I can't remember the name of the third, I can't remember the third school, but these are Ivy League schools. And well, since that appearance, one of the presidents has been forced to step down as president of the college of UPenn. The UPenn president has stepped down. So, as I predicted before, there will be essentially changes in belief systems, changes in challenges to belief systems. We have the United States has historically been an ally of Israel, come hell or high water. Israel has done some, I'll be the first to admit Israel has done some bad things in terms of the Palestinians. But I've never really seen anything quite like the demonstrations I've seen coming out of the college campuses over the past few months, and also the demonstrations of younger people. So this is really gives one pause for thought, because even if somebody is doing something um, you don't agree with in a different part of the world, you don't call for genocide. You don't, it's just, it's just, um, I'm just trying to think of a good way to put it. It's really um, tantamount to threatening an entire people with death. You know, I can't really um, flower it up or pretty it up. Yeah, that's basically what it is. Okay, so it's like going up to a person's house and saying, "I'm going to kill you and your entire family." That's an action. That's an aggressive action. I can't. I can't. The way they were parsing the responses was just really, really bizarre. So that's just my opinion. You're entitled to your own. I just found it really, really bizarre. And they had a few chances to get themselves out of hot water. I don't know what's going to happen to the other two presidents. Probably nothing. But basically, we have Saturn aspecting Mars, so that makes precision in speech incredibly important during this period in time. Rahu is in Saturn's in the second house. Speech is going to come out a little bit stupid or a little bit authoritarian. Okay. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter. This is normally not a good position for optimism. Um, but Rahu in the third house actually gives a certain amount of bravery to people in order for them to say what they wish to say, no matter how much you may disagree with them. So I think one of the things that you have here is this kind of a Jupiter Venus opposition, which is allowing all sorts of things to be said. Jupiter and Venus essentially takes the floodgates out. You know, Venus in Libra in particular, in Swati, is going to strengthen Rahu, and Jupiter in Ashvini nakshatra is the first nakshatra, is going to make attempts at healing go backwards, if, for lack of a better term. Um, I think one of the things that comes up is so. So let's talk just briefly about freedom of speech. Uh, Freedom of speech um, is sacrosanct, especially in the United States. It's the First Amendment to the Constitution. The other colonies would not agree to the Constitution until the Bill of Rights was installed. Okay. Um, and it's the First Amendment to the Constitution. It's really, so first is usually most important. Okay. Now the First Amendment is really about government not making any laws, but it's been interpreted much more broadly over time. And so that's why you see issues about social media coming up. That's why you see issues about, so the effort to um, prohibit freedom of speech, even if it's hateful freedom of speech, is by the government is inherently unconstitutional. If you get down to lower levels like colleges and businesses, it starts to become a little bit more uh, iffy. Okay, I'm not a constitutional attorney, but just this is just based upon my layman's knowledge of the Constitution. And I think that this is where the line is between uh, schools being asked about code of conduct versus action versus um, freedom of expression. So, so essentially, I think that the so I can't judge their responses. I just know that in legal terms, I can threaten somebody, so I can say it, but that doesn't negate my accountability under the law for saying what I have said. Okay. So this is where it gets dicey. This is where it gets something for scholars to debate, for people to test out, for people to discover. Um, if it's threatening language, there's a problem, obviously. Um, some of the other things that have been essentially uh, blocked have had to do with people feeling threatened on college campuses. So I can understand that. And I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about this, okay, because this is essentially it's a micro bubble uh, in world events. It's not something, but I do worry that we're setting up a pattern for uh, people saying, people um, threatening large groups of people and just going like, oh, well, they're not really hurting anybody, are they? Well, they're threatening people. And I think that this is a more active threat um, than some of the other um, complaints I've heard about unsafeness. Okay. Um, the other thing is, so let's look at world events. We have Sun and Mars in the 10th house, so everybody's willing to fight. Everybody's like really aggressive. People want to bring out their armies. Moon and Venus are in the ninth house. This is actually a good combination. It will make people more friendly, more forgiving, more romantic, more blessed, more able to do things. It gives them a little bit more freedom, especially in partnerships. And I think Moon is heading towards a stabilization in about a day, so that'll make this week a little bit depressing for people. But the one thing I want to encourage you about is Mercury's in the 12th house, so a lot of what's happening here is there's a lot of communications going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of communications being shared. Um, uh, and Jupiter is aspecting Mercury again. Okay, so that's actually allowing more information to flow through backdoor ch- channels than normal. In terms of commerce, Saturn aspecting Jupiter, Jupiter with Rahu, since Jupiter and Rahu departed, I've noticed a decline in gasoline prices. That's a good thing, obviously. And I have also noticed people feeling a little bit more optimistic, but cautious about the upcoming year. The one thing, and all these planets are clustered roughly between Virgo and Aries. So Taurus, trade, Gemini, communications, Cancer, domestic care, and even Leo, leadership, are essentially less active than they normally are. Or Leo, the leadership point is coming in very strongly. So there's a certain amount of subterfuge connected with a lot of leadership positions around the world. And when I say subterfuge, a lot of behind the scenes activity in order to prevent um, change. And to a certain extent, one of the things that happens when people are afraid of change is they try to introduce a greater fear into the world. So I think um, one of the things is you shouldn't be afraid to express yourself. However, threats threats tend to go into an entirely different realm. Um, you can say maybe uh, acts of genocide are being committed, but you don't call for genocide. It's a fine line. But I think that at least from this combination, over the next couple of months or so, over the next 3 to 4 months or so, you'll see governments becoming increasingly more restrictive and increasingly more fearful of change. So expect to see more fearsome events publicized and um, propagated, for lack of a better term. And just prepare yourself for that. It's not necessarily bad. The Moon Venus Jupiter opposition is sort of like a little bit of a breather. It gives us a little bit of optimism. But I think the Saturn Jupiter aspect is going to be in play for at least the next 4 months or so. And around May, we'll be able to breathe a little bit more freely and express ourselves commerce may improve, I'm hoping. And the other thing is, we may have, uh, although there will be ideological extremes hitting from both sides. This is more of a time of ideological extremes as Rahu enters Pisces, because Rahu Pisces is belief systems and also escapism, and to a certain extent fanaticism. So it has sort of like a dual-edged sword. It's this very mystical kind of a combination, but it also makes you ignore facts. It also makes you ignore its almost total belief. Okay, so I trust my teacher no matter what he does. I trust my government no matter what it does. Those kinds of things. And I think Rahu going into this particular sign will undercut that trust a great deal and will also allow more extreme positions to surface. It'll also cause change in religious institutions and spiritual institutions, and it will continue to cause change in governments. Okay, so this is not over, but again, I would encourage people not to be afraid. When times change, these are opportunities for you to change the times. Clever, right? All right. So you can actually change the world during these periods, and not necessarily for the worse. A lot of people assume that any change is for the worse. You can actually change it for the better. You can actually change it to make it more fair, more equitable in a real sense. Okay. And more just. There will be increasing, I think when Jupiter hits Taurus, there'll be an increasing tendency to hoard goods, though, and because I've seen this before, and also an increasing focus on financial security. So this is over the first few months. So this is around May of this year through June of next year. I'm sorry, May of 2024 through June of 2023. And also just looking at global incidences over the next 6 months or so, you'll see more attempts. The thing I'm most concerned about, I think, you'll see more attempts at controlling the flow of goods, and this will probably hit right around May or June. And in terms of diseases, maybe not so much. In terms of natural catastrophes, maybe more, because K2's in Virgo. So that will cause more earthquakes, more volcanoes. Rahu and Pisces will cause more sea injuries. Saturn in Aquarius will cause more air accidents or tornadoes. And these things aren't necessarily connected. They're not unconnected from climate change, but they're astrological weather indicators. Okay. So these combinations in the chart don't necessarily have anything to do in terms of a causal effect uh, from from climate issues. So this isn't denying that climate change isn't real. I'm just saying this is an astrological phenomenon. And so you'll see, especially as Saturn and Rahu come together, you'll see a lot of what I would call nostalgia for simpler times, maybe even uh, a tendency to kind of drop out or tune out of um, of society. We saw the same thing in the late 60s. We saw the same thing in the early 90s. We saw the same thing in And we're going to see the same thing around 2024 to 2025. So people will be more um, prone towards escapism. I'm expecting to see a lot of addictive behavior increase, unfortunately, and even a lot of cults start to manifest again. So this will be interesting. Um, but and not political cults. These are like real religious cults or ideological cults. And so I think one of the things I'm going to be looking at is especially towards next August when the sun goes over K2, and that looks like a particularly next August, September to October. It looks like a particularly dangerous time for the government, for governments all around the world. You'll also see that around uh, March through May of this year. Um, and even some food shortages. But again, like I said, if you're aware of these things coming up fairly in the future, you can always plan. And also, again, like I said, don't be afraid. These change inevitably produces adaptation. Adaptation makes us stronger. It makes us more flexible. So these are not bad things. These are things that need to happen. Okay. Whatever you do, don't be afraid because is fear restricts behavior. It makes people afraid to talk, to take chances, to experiment. And we're going to need a lot of experimenters over the next couple of years. Okay. All right. So let's go to the charts for the signs. So we'll get some more specifics about different parts of the world next week, but that's what I'm seeing in the chart. Um, so December 10th, we have, need to get check my clock. December 10th, we have Aries as the first sign in the zodiac. Aries is having better relationship luck than it usually has, although relationship partners may seem a little bit moody, um, and a lot of focus on home life, a lot of focus on expenses. Aries is still continuing to have less cash than it needs, but it's more optimistic, perhaps because it's the holiday season, perhaps because of the Jupiter Venus opposition. But the Lord of the first house is in the eighth house, so it's trying to be canny or be quiet about what it wants to do, especially connected with the children. Okay, especially connected with what the children want. And Saturn's is the 10th house lord in the 11th. Mercury's in the ninth house, so that will give it a strong ability to fulfill its desires. K2's in the sixth house. Again, unexpected illnesses, but nothing major, more dietary issues for the sign. But let's move on to Taurus. This is May 15th to June 15th. This particular sign is um, the Lord is in the sixth house, along with Venus as Lord of the third house. So it makes it a little bit easier for this sign to fulfill its goals or its ambitions. But again, there can be some stomach issues. There can be some problems with children being a little bit difficult to deal with. And also, there'll be additional arguments with spouse. Saturn's in the 10th house, career life is strong. Rahu's in the 11th house, short term gains, but again, heavy expenses. So you have to watch out. Both Aries and Taurus have to watch out for heavy expenses. For Gemini, Gemini has Mercury in the 7th house, so it'll be very focused on relationship life. That's sort of like been a theme of this sign over the past month. There is a certain amount of discrimination coming together about relationship life. Um, Mercury's out of Mula Nakshatra, so it's feeling less destructive. It's feeling less. Um, it's feeling clearer about relationship patterns, and essentially, Kate, who's in the 4th house, can give some problems with parents or a mother, but Moon and Venus are in the 5th house, so children will be very, very blessed and very, very happy to be around. Sun and Mars can give some uh, injuries or accidents, maybe even operations for this sign in this chart. Saturn is aspecting Sun and Mars, so it'll be a slow recovery. As a matter of fact, within about 5 to 6 days, you'll see a lot more energy return to this sign. And Saturn's in the 9th house, so slow growth, but positive growth. Rahu's in the 10th house, very good for career success. Jupiter's in the 11th, good for career gains. For Cancer, Cancer has no planets in the 7th house. The Lord of Cancer is in the 4th house, so it's in conjunction with the moon. That's actually a good placement. It's happy with the moon there, and it'll make this chart this sign more sensual or more physically interested. It'll be muted a bit, but more physically interested, more sociable, wanting more friends. And Mars and Sun are in the 5th house. That's a good placement for this chart. It's a Dana Yoga or a wealth producing combination. So that'll give this chart more potential for wealth, especially through property. Mercury's in the 6th house. Again, some dietary discomfort that shows up a lot in charts, maybe even some lung discomfort because Mercury rules the lungs. Saturn is in the 8th house. That can give some chronic problems with health, so you have to watch out for this sign. But Rahu's in the 9th house, so that does indicate some problems with the knees. Jupiter's the knees, and Jupiter's in the 10th house. That'll give ultimate healing with the legs and the knees. Excuse me. Leo has K2 in the 2nd house. So again, this sign tends to be misunderstood. Governments around the world are being misunderstood or disbelieved a great deal. Moon and Venus are in the 3rd house. That's a fairly good combination for success with little effort. Jupiter's aspecting in the 9th house, so that's a good combination for luck for this sign for this month. Mars is in the 4th house. This is Mars affliction, so relationship life will still be stymied or limited, and probably won't stop for another couple of months. Mercury's in the 5th house, although there can be some romantic entanglements with younger people. But long-term relationships are kind of dry right now. Rahu's in the 8th. There's some anxiety about security and stability for the sign. Jupiter's in the 9th house. Its Lord Mars is in the fourth house, so that creates a kind of a Raj Yoga or a kind of a special combination between the fourth, the fifth, and the ninth houses. So this actually gives a great deal of luck to the sign. And overall, it's lucky career wise, but um, you'll have to watch out for reputation because of K2 in the second house. For Virgo, Virgo has K2 in the first house, so people with Sun, Moon, rising sign in Virgo will have special challenges in terms of motivating themselves. There'll be unexpected opportunities, but there can be some ignorance or some kind of lack of recognition for what they're doing. Moon and Venus are in the second house. It doesn't matter because they'll still bring in money to a certain extent. If for this sign, if their ego is important to them, or their ego being fulfilled is important to them, um, it's not going to be a good year and a half. But in terms of money, it looks pretty good right now. And it looks like it's going to be relatively good over the next year and a half or so. Sun and Mars are in the third house, very good for bravery. Mercury is in the fourth house, good for communication. So this chart will have better communications at home. Rahu's in Saturn's in the sixth, good for defeating enemies through hard work. Rahu's in the seventh house. Some uncertainty or dissatisfaction with relationship partners or business partners. Jupiter's in the eighth, unexpected windfalls or combinations of money through late April. Educational activities from April onward. And overall, the 10th house Lord does indicate some career success by being located in the fourth house. So there'll be an elevation of some status in career life, but this sign will definitely feel ignored. For Libra rising, Libra rising has Moon and Venus in the first house, aspected by Jupiter. Good time for new opportunities, new career opportunities over the next few days. Sun and Mars create a financial Raj Yoga in the second house. That's very good for finances. Even benefits from the government, although it will be delayed. Saturn's aspecting this combination after all. Jupiter is aspected by Saturn, but it's still in the seventh house. So relationship partners will seem a little bit down or a little bit unhappy, but they'll start to come around. They'll start to be a little bit more agreeable over the next month or so. And all the rest of the side of the chart is empty. So there'll be a lot more focus on home life and home activities, but career will also be connected with home. Okay? Financial gains will be connected with home. Those kinds of things. Okay, this is the more active side of the zodiac. Sun and Mars are, and there is one other thing we can take great pleasure in. The potential for Kala Sarpa Yoga is greatly diminished over the next few years because Jupiter's going to take around 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, maybe around 4 years before we see the potential for Kala Sarpa Yoga again. So that's actually good. It's Kala Sarpa is that's when all the planets are between Rahu and Ketu. And Kala Sarpa is kind of misunderstood. It's sort of like a great accomplishment combination, but people can be ignored or not, or they have like tremendous trials to overcome. But Kala Sarpa can be beneficial. Excuse me. Sun and Mars for okay, for Scorpio are in the first house, so that creates a special personality yoga or great personality yoga um, with Mars, and so Martian traits will be very strong in the sign. Good communication skills. Saturn's in the fourth house, so again, a lot of expense or a lot of focus on home life. Rahu's in the fifth house, a lot of frustration and creative events, a lot of frustration with children. Jupiter's in the sixth, some problems with illnesses. And finally, we go over here, and K2 is in the 11th house. So that means friends are untrustworthy for Scorpio risings right now. One thing I forgot to mention is good for spiritual life for Libra rising, K2 in the 12th, but it can create unexpected expenses due to either damage or unanticipated events. A lot of times it's related to things like plumbing on a mundane level, but even cars can be affected by that. Okay. Um, for Sagittarius rising has Saturn in the third house, gives a lot of bravery and courage. Rahu in the fourth house, dissatisfaction with home life, but not really knowing where to go in terms of career life. Jupiter's in the fifth, good for luck, good for financial growth. And let's see now, Mercury's in the first house. So Mercury's considered a bad planet for this particular rising sign. It's what they call a Vedic planet. So it will make communications more difficult than normal. It'll make relations with wife a little bit more difficult than normal. K2 is in the 10th house, some lack of career recognition, but good for financial gains, but also a lot of expenditures connected with property and also with the government. For Capricorn rising, Capricorn or Capricorn sun or Capricorn moon, Saturn's in the second house. I think whenever you see a combination like that, it's good for money, but it's really good for holding on to money. Rahu's in the third, a lot of ambition for the sign. Jupiter's in the fourth, so a lot of focus on home life again. Career life actually is sort of booming this month for Capricorn rising, although bosses or superiors are a little bit difficult to get along with. There's a little bit of unexpected turns coming from them, but it's not a bad combination. And there is some worry that bosses will change their minds or career will be in some kind of danger. It's really not. It's just really a good time to travel for this particular sign. For in terms of assets, this sign should focus on real estate, also on friendships and family. For Aquarius, you have Saturn in the first house. That creates a great personality yoga. So we have two great personality yogas. We have Sash Yoga from Saturn in the first house and Ruchaka Yoga from Mars in the first house in Scorpio. And also we have actually three, now that I look at it more carefully, my apologies, we have three great personality yogas occurring right now. We have Malavya Yoga, which is a Venus great personality yoga. So this actually makes Venus kind of more logical, Venus rule signs more logical and more prone to thinking out what they want as opposed to impulsively leaping for it like they would have when Venus was in Virgo. And the other thing is Saturn gives great strength to Aquarius. Career life is very strong for Aquarius. Relationship life is very strong for Aquarius. It's a big focus. And Rahu's in the second house. Aquarius will still feel like it needs more money. It won't be satisfied with the money it has. And that frustration will last for about a year and a half. Finally, Jupiter over here in the third house. There'll be more ambition for this particular sign and also more career success and more career luck. Okay. But a lot of work. Okay. For Pisces, Rahu sits in the first house. Jupiter's in the second house, so money comes in, but the sign will still feel vaguely dissatisfied with its belief systems or its ethics or its overall situation. Kate, who's in the seventh house, this will give some detachment from relationship partners or from partnerships in general, kind of like a solitary nature for both Virgo and Pisces. Moon and Venus are in the eighth house, aspecting the second house makes this sign seem more sexy, more appealing to others. Okay. That's sort of like a cliched combination for sex appeal or for charisma, is having planets in the eighth house. Mars is, so it's almost like in Western astrology, it's almost like the Scorpio thing going on, where the person doesn't say very much, but they're kind of sexy. Mars is in Scorpio, so that will give luck through one's own efforts and through listening to bosses or superiors. Mercury's in the 10th house, strong desire to change careers or explore new careers, but I wouldn't take it right now. Um, I wait until Jupiter was in this sign around May or so. And finally, we go over here, Saturn, some more problems with expenses. So this entire cluster from roughly from uh, Aquarius all the way through Taurus has expenses, has heavy expenses. The other planets have them too, but they're not quite as obvious as they are in those signs. So just be a little bit careful. Libra has them too, but again, it's from unexpected things. It's from accidents or health issues or even things as ridiculous as plumbing. So um, Libras and Virgos are particularly advised to watch out for their health during this upcoming year. So let's look at the chart for the map of the world, and we'll look at that for a few minutes. Okay, see if I can get this to behave. It behaved very well on the other computer program. Let's see if it does it on this one. Okay, it did it. Great. I'm really happy. All right, so we have the moon is with Venus, so actually a relatively pleasant condition over Alaska, although some danger of flooding because Jupiter, Venus, and Moon combination are not good. Um, and for that particular issue, Mars and Sun, some problems with the government in Western Canada, maybe even in uh, Washington and Oregon, and a lot of communication coming out of California, Nevada, up through um, Colorado, uh, Utah, and Utah, and Nebraska, Kansas. Uh, yeah, it looks like those states are going to have, uh, especially over here, Mercury's passing over Southern California, down to Baja, a lot of communication coming out of that. A lot of behind the scenes negotiating. So again, I'm wondering if this has to do with Gavin Newsom in some way, shape, or form, but I don't know for sure because I haven't looked at his chart. It would be interesting to look at his chart. Venus is passing over Mercury, so there'll be a lot of communications about um, women's issues and gender issues coming out of Texas, up north, all the way to Nebraska and Kansas, and all the way down to Mexico. Moon is passing over, so this entire Moon Venus combination happening in the Midwest. So this should give, again, some potential for flooding. That's the downside of this combination because Jupiter's right on top of Venus over here. But also some relatively prosperous events in this part of the country. I know we had the Texas, what was it, the Texas shootings and the Las Vegas shootings. So this could indicate the Las Vegas shootings happening over the past week. Okay. Moon is so we can say, quote unquote, maybe some potential for difficult weather over here. Mars is passing through New Hampshire, close to Massachusetts, down through Haiti and the Dominican Republic, up through Guyana and Venezuela. So Venezuela just had that vote um, that they recognized Guyana, one of the oil rich parts of Guyana, as belonging to Venezuela. So there's a very strong possibility of war down there. Um, and this combination tends to indicate there's a lot of news coming out of there. Actually, is what this indicates because this is not. But there's a Mars line coming out right here, and there's a Saturn line, so that's not a good combination. Um, Economically, I think the worst part area is going to be Dominican Republic and Haiti, uh, and possibly Nova Scotia. Mercury is passing through Brazil. We'll hear a lot more about Brazil. We'll hear a lot more about Argentina. We'll hear a lot more about because of economic problems going through Argentina and Chile. Um, there's a Rahu line passing over the mid-Atlantic. Some potential for boating disasters, although I'm not really quite sure about that. And there's a Venus and Jupiter line heading over East Africa, some potential for flooding in this part of the continent. And let's see now, we have England has Sun and Mars lines passing over England and Ireland, so probably some more riots out there. And we have a descending, and more government control. A descending Mars line passing through Spain and into northern Africa, especially through Libya and through the Congo and down into the east coast of Africa. Excuse me. Saturn is passing through Sweden, Germany, Italy, and Algeria. So I think this part of the world is going to experience some kind of an economic slowdown. That's already happened in England and Ireland to a lesser extent. But it looks like the European markets and North Africa, all the way down through Western Africa, are going to be experiencing some economic slowdowns. And we'll be hearing a lot about uh, Belgium and Germany. The Netherlands are over here, so that I would include that cluster because there was just a populist government elected in the Netherlands, which some people interpret as the first step towards fascism. I just interpret it as populism. And there's a Mercury line heading through Turkey and roughly Saudi Arabia and down through Oman. And I think that part of the world we're going to be hearing a lot more about also. Uh, Ukraine, there's a Rahu line. So I think essentially, effectively, I think the war is over, but there are continued efforts to um, prop up uh, the military involvement in the Ukraine. And again, it isn't over until peace treaties are signed or some kind of agreement is reached, obviously. So this will probably persist for the next few months, unfortunately. Um, I wish it were over. Jupiter's running right through Kazakhstan, and Pakistan. It's a real country. It's not just in the Borat movies. And through Afghanistan and Pakistan and into India. So this Jupiter line is actually okay. It's not a bad line, but again, this can produce flooding, especially if it's with Venus. So that's been benefic in terms of increasing quantities of moisture, but not necessarily in terms um, of making people comfortable. There's a moon line going over Bengal, Ladakh, and um, Bangladesh. And this part of the world over here has planets between Moon and Mars. So there'll be some news of some outbreaks or some unrest. Iran, I'm trying to think what I read today. Oh, China is having Human Rights Day is causing some concerns for China. So I think in terms of the line is hitting through China right here, and we have Mars and Sun lines hitting through right here. I think you'll see some increased repression in China, some increased government crackdowns in China, um, maybe in Vietnam, maybe in Borneo, maybe in Indonesia. Um, and as we go over here, there's a sun line. So this is like this area of China will be under strict monitoring, I think. Um, Japan has Mercury running through it. So does Australia. Australia has this Rahu line running through, which indicates great panic or great fear. And the Jupiter Venus line running over here, which is uh, kind of a difficult combination because it'll cause monsoons or flooding, but it's not really a bad combination, not really a horrible combination. Um, and New Zealand has, let me see what those lines are. Hold on a second. New Zealand has a Mars line, so there could be some increase, or close to the Mars line. So there could be some increased violence in New Zealand. That seems unlikely given New Zealand's population, but who knows? There may be. One of the things about living in the United States is we tend not to hear a lot about the rest of the world unless it's particular power spots that we're involved with. Like we heard a lot about the Ukraine and Poland when the buildup of uh, of military aid was heading towards Ukraine. We hear a lot about Israel and Palestine now that the war broke, now that a conflict has broken out after October 7th. But we tend to be a little bit dumb about what's happening in the rest of the world. Uh, I don't blame us, actually. I blame uh, our media for essentially keeping us a little bit. They, they, the media puts out what sells. Okay, so that's basically what they do. So I can't blame the media entirely, but I don't think we get as good reporting from around the world as other countries do. All right, so that's enough for me. I look forward to seeing you next week, and God bless you all. Remember, don't be afraid. Look for opportunities, and I love you all. Namaste. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.